I had a siren at four. It's 6 o'clock here in the morning. I had a
Oh
siren
my God.
4:30 in the morning. We have to wake up and go to the bomb shelter.
Where is it far to go?
No, it's in the house. It's like in the
Oh,
basement.
oh, oh. Okay.
Ernie,
Hi,
Shalom Aleichem.
hi, Shalom Aleichem.
How was your trip?
The trip was beautiful.
Yeah, you were the only one in business class?
No, David and Judy was on my flight. There were other people in business. The plane was empty.
Mm-hmm.
Plane was empty. The premium economy was maybe just a third, and economy had very few people. But there were people. There were people. Most of the people were in business class. There were empty seats,
You
but
know,
not that many.
my brother can't get back into Israel. He flew to Addis Ababa from South Africa, and then he was on El Al from basically Athens. He was by getting on the gate to get in. They said, "Sorry, the flight's cancelled." Now he's stuck in Athens now. I don't know how he's getting back to Israel. Can't get back into Israel, and he lives there, and he's a citizen.
He could go.
Ilana was also stuck in
Yeah, but,
Addis
but
Abeba.
Ilana got back in. They
Yeah.
waited for longer because they wanted to get, he wanted to get in. He was in a guaranteed seat. He had paid a lot of extra. He paid for business, a whole thing, and they got canceled too. So
You know, your brother could go by boat to Haifa.
yeah, okay.
I mean, from Greece, it's not far.
Yeah, I'm not sure if their boat's coming in either. Who says their boat's coming in to Haifa? Who says their boat's coming in? There's no boats coming in at the moment. You think with the missiles flying, there's boats coming in? No boats coming
I don't know.
in. Yeah, exactly. Okay, who are you staying at?
I'm here at Caleb. Come here. Say hello. Come here.
Oh, you by Lisa?
That's my grandson, Caleb.
Yeah, I know it's Caleb, of course.
Yeah, and my Elisa's. Yeah.
And did you have any? There were no sirens last night, right?
Yes, an hour and a half ago, woke us up. There was no silence all day. I thought I was bringing a new thing. There were no sirens, and then at 4:30 in the morning, a siren came on. And then you hear some explosions in the sky. Not very loud. There must
Mm.
be interception, and then you go back to sleep. You're in there for about 5 minutes. The kids are sleeping there, so
Mm.
the kids don't go. The adults go down there,
Mm.
and then we go back into the room.
So where are you in the Mamad now?
No,
Oh.
I'm in. It's a playroom.
I see the Mamad's behind you.
No, the mamad's downstairs in
Oh,
the like in a basement,
okay.
and Elisa sleeps right next to it with the baby. Goes in there. Then the three little kids sleep in the mamad, so they don't have to wake up.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, let's
Let me
learn.
ask you. Let me ask you another question. Is 8 o'clock in the morning? Can we do the daf at 8 o'clock in the morning, or doesn't work?
I can do it.
What about Mario?
Not, not every day I can because I have a lot of inspections lately. But yeah, if we want to start it, let's try.
I think
Well, we're gonna have to do that on Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. And since I was thinking that, well, I mean that's 5 p.m. for me. So it's 6 a.m. is fine too.
okay,
But
I,
it's
I,
late for you guys.
I,
It's nine
I, pref-
o'clock
I prefer, I prefer to do that.
to do 8 in the morning. Mario, why don't we try that tomorrow?
Okay.
Because Abe said also he can do 8 in the morning.
Tomorrow Tuesday already.
Well, let's do. Uh,
Yeah. It's okay.
it's a
Let's
Yes.
try
fine.
it. Let's
Ernie,
try it.
fine. It's fine for me.
Let's try it. Let's
Okay.
try it.
Okay.
Okay, we're on Ayin 70. It's actually on the bottom of 69b.
Mm-hmm.
Oy Rava, Leinian Meiser Mai. Now we're talking about these questions where we harvested some grain, then you replanted it. That's the sugi that we're in. And we want to know regarding Meiser. Now, Hechidami, what about Meiser? Kagondamdinu Vashrinu. He he looked at a field and he had a bunch of grain which he did not grind, and he was going to replant them to allow them to continue to grow.
Signal and a long message.
And normally, to give Meiser, you've got to measure it properly. But here it wasn't grounded yet, so they didn't really have the normal mechanism of giving the Meiser. But he gave Meiser based on an estimation, because you're allowed to do that. And then he planted it, v'shatlin, v'hoisifulahu. But then it grew. Now, im timtzalom lo azlin and basar ikr. We've been dealing with, do we go after the original, what you planted, the roots, and you already gave Meiser for that. And here now, when you reharvest this new crop, you wouldn't have to give the Meiser again. The Tosefes Boyasiri, and of course, any new additional growth, you need to do Meiser. But what about Iker Mai? What about the root? You have to add the roots that you put in there and give more Meiser on that. Any other time you plant, you have to give Meiser for everything, including the root, here as well. So Omer Le Rava said, no, Dover Shazaro Kalo. By wheat and barley, when you put the seeds into the ground, the seeds decompose. It does not remain intact. So then Loma Boile. So, of course, you give Meiser on anything that grows because it's completely new. There is no seed originally that remains. When you put a whole sort of stalk of grain into the ground, that does not decompose. So the shaila is mai. Maybe you have to add that in there when you calculate the Meiser. Tipshutle, we're going to answer. Mehadam Rav Yitzchak Rav Yechon. Litra botzel shetiknu. If you have a certain amount of onions and you separated Truman Meiser from it, uzro, and then you replanted it all, misashel fikulo. When you put an onion into the ground, it doesn't decompose. It just grows. And the halacha tells us that you give Meiser on the whole thing. So you see, the putting it in the ground does not change its status, for at least for something that doesn't decompose. So the Gemara says it's not approved. By onions, that's the normal way of planting it. But by a stalk of grain, you don't normally put a stalk of grain in the ground. You normally just put wheat kernels. So that continues to remain a shiloh. Another case. You have a flower pot, and you're growing grain in there, and it doesn't have a hole, so it's not connected to the ground. So ilo nakiv, if it doesn't have a hole, so haloi nakiv, there's no midoraisa din, since it's not connected to the ground. You don't have to give meiser from it midoraisa. Is the shaila dilma chazer v'nakvaka amrit? That after the grain started growing, then you made the hole in it, and it continued to grow. So do you count the root to give meiser for everything, or just from the new growth? So hacha, when you had the pot that you made a hole in it, and you had first started growing grain in it, and then you just connected it to the ground by putting a hole in it, it's chadazriyahi, it's one planting. And therefore, it became attached, it grew more. So you would certainly include the root and the whole thing when you take meiser. But putting stalks in the ground like we've been dealing with, awesome, stays resistant. You're talking about two separate plantings. You had the original planting where the stalks grew. Then you harvested it, and now you put the new stalk into the ground. Maybe there he still has a shaila, whether it's only you only take trumas and from what grows new, and you don't include the stalks that are still there. And in fact, the Gemara doesn't answer. Boiravavo, shiboilas. You have grain that's connected to the stalk, shemercha bakri, and you harvested it and you put it in a pile and you smoothed it. And then you went ahead and shasla, replanted it. The kara aleh Hashem b'mechuber. While it's growing, you said, I want this grain to be truma for the whole thing. Mao. Kiva demircha tavlala. Once you piled up grain and you smoothed it, so it creates it to become tevel. Now there's a chiyuv to give trumas and maestros in order for you to eat it. Therefore, kikara ala Hashem kachalach. Therefore, when he declared, even though it's in the ground growing, he gave it a shame truma. It works. Oh, Dilma, maybe no. Kivan de shosla pokale tivlimine. Maybe by putting it in the ground, the fact that it was once tevel goes away and it starts again. Like the clock starts ticking again. Amalei Rabbanan Labaya, in came. And you're going to say that the grain that I declare is truma. Matzinu truma b'machor b'lakarka. Then you have an example of truma that's connected to the ground. Utnan, yet there's a Mishnah, lo matzinu truma b'machor b'lakarka. We never find there'd be a case where truma is connected to the ground. Must be that even though he was kara aleh Hashem, the shame truma doesn't come onto it. Amr Leah bias says absolutely not. When Kitanya when the Mishnah said lo matzinu truma b'mechuma lekarka leinin ichiyuvi misa, that's in order for it to become truma, so that if a non-Kohen ate it, he would get misa b'dei shamayim and also have to pay chomesh. And if you eat it, you have to pay a penalty of a fifth. To that Mishnah, which says something grow in the ground cannot become truma on that level. Because the itolish v'ochel, because if you disconnect it from the ground and eat it, tolushu. It's tolush. V'i gochin v'ochel, if you bent over while it's still in the ground and ate it, but well, that's not the normal way of eating. Normally, people bring food to their mouth. They don't bend down like a dog and eat on the ground. And therefore would not be concerned either way. Either it's tolish and it's not truma, or he bent over and it's not considered achila. So the Gemara says, who says it's not considered an achila? Umaishnam midichsiv apinkasa de ilfa. Why is that different than what was written in the notebook of Ilfa? Beitze nivlas ha'oif ator. You have a kosher bird, and it got killed with a shotgun, so it's an avela. And it had eggs inside of it. Some of it, miktosan bachutz, some of the eggs had already been laid, or miktosan bifnim, some are inside. Mibifnim, mitamim godim abeis. Just like now normally, the carcass of a kosher bird is metame the person when it's in your throat. So the eggs that are found inside the bird, the dead bird, is like a piece of flesh. And therefore, it's like any other basar, which would be metame to masochet. However, mibachutz, the eggs that are outside, ein metamim godim abeis abliya. They do not convey tumah. because the eggs that are on the outside are not considered part of the body anymore. Now, this is not normally the normal method of eating. Yet we say that there's tumas. Tuma conveys to the person because it's considered achila, which goes against what Abaya said, that it's not considered achila if you bend over. So tolush, when eggs have separated from the bird, avidi inshi achli, people will eat that. But when grain is attached to the ground, law avidi inshi achli, people are not going to bend over and eat grain from the ground. That would not be considered legal achila. Amrav Tavimi bar Kistam Shmuel. Hazorea kiloyim. You're not allowed to grow hybrid crops. If you did so in a flower pot that is not connected to the ground because it doesn't have a hole, osir midrabanan. It's osir. It's osir, but it's only midrabanan because it's not midorais. If Rav Tavyumi is telling me that the Chachamim will give Malchus for violating a rabbinic law, fine. Then I understand why he's saying osir. But ela osir, if he's just saying you're not allowed to eat it, or you're not allowed to plant it, my kabashmula. Dim Rabbanan Havizriya. Rabbanan certainly consider it planting. So what's the big chiddush of it? Of course you're going to be osir to do that. If he's telling me you get malchus as well, then it's a big chiddush. But otherwise, what's the problem? Tanina. Tara mishe'ena nokov ala nokov. Let's say you have two flower pots. One flower pot has a hole in it and connected to the ground. That's your chayiv truma midoraisa. And then you have grain growing in a flower pot without a hole. And you take some of that grain and you separate truma on behalf of the pot that had a hole. It's considered truma, at least midrabanan. But v'yachzer v'yitrom, he then has to take more produce from the pot that had a hole in it and separate truma. But you see that it is truma midrabanan in a pot that doesn't have a hole in it. So what's the point of Rav Tavyumi saying osir? So, and a chanami, the Gemara ends up, it's to tell you that you get malchus for it. Okay. Mishnah. This Mishnah has a little bit to do with Pesach. So, hachitin. There are 5 types of grain where the Isra of Chodosh and the Isra of Challah, and we'll see the issue of Pesach, of Matzah, all apply. Chitin is wheat. So oirin is barley. Kusmin is spelt. Shibolet shuel is oats. Shifon is rye. Hare'elu chayovim b'chala. All these grains are chayiv. You cannot eat them unless you bring them in chasoimer. Mitztarfim zemzeh. And there's hitztarfus. That means you need dough, a certain amount of dough. If you have dough of all of it together, it's mitztarif to give you the chiyuv challah. V'asrim b'chodesh mifnei oimer. You cannot eat them prior to the oimer. Umilik tzom mifnei Pesach. You cannot harvest it before Pesach. There's a separate prohibition because it says Reishis Tzirchem, that the omer has to be the first thing that you harvest. You can't harvest anything before the omer. Im Yishrishu Kodem Omer. If the roots had taken root prior to the 16th day of Nisan, then ha'omer matirin. That's what's called the new grain, and the omer is matirid. The imlav, anything that rooted after the 16th day of Nisan, you need next year's omer to matirid, right? Asur ha'sheyavo omer habo. Tana. Kusmin min chitim. Spelt is like wheat. Shibolet, shual, v'shifon, oats, and rye is minsa oirin, is a type of barley. Usmin, spelled Gulba. Another name of it is Gulba. Shifon Rai is Dishra. Shibolet Shuel is Shibolet Tala. Okay. Now, what are we excluding? Hani in, oires v'doichenlo, rice and millet, there's no inyan of chadash, and there's no inyan of challah. Well, here it's talking about challah. There's no chi of challah for rice and millet. Menana mili, Amresh Lakish, Asya lechem mimatzah. There's a gzeir shava, ksiv hachav haya b'chachem lechem haaretz. That's by challah. Uksiv hasam by Pesach, by eating matzah on Pesach, lechem oini. So just like we'll see, how do we know by matzah it refers to those 5 grains? But basically the hekesh is, since by matzah and Pesach you could only make matzah from those 5 grains, so to challah there's only a chi of challah from those 5 grains. Freit the Gemara v'hasam gufa, where in matzah do you see minolon that you can only make matzah from those 5 grains? If you try to make matzah from rice or millet, you have not fulfilled mitzvah of matzah. Amresh Lakish, v'chein tanav Rabbi Shmuel, v'chein tanav Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Amar Kra. It says lo yisochal alav chametz, shivas yamim tochal alav matzois lechem. So there's a connection between the love of eating chametz and the mitzvah of eating matzah. Dvorim habon leidei chimutz, only grains that can be leavened. Adam yotze ben yedei choyva bepesach. Yotzu elu, rice and millet, she'ein bon leidei chimutz, elu leidei sirchon. They spoil. If you let them sit and rise, they don't leaven. They spoil. And therefore, we have the same din to challah, because lechem. Then it says, umitztarfin zemzeh, tana. Hatvu v'kmochim v'abtzeikos, the raw grain, the flour, the dough, all of it is mitztarfin zemzeh. L'may hilchasa to what halacha? Amar Rav Kahana, linyan chodosh. That means if you eat a kazayas, you're going to be chayev malchus for eating chodosh. And it's combining anything, the grain, the flour, the dough, it's all mitzdaref. Rav Yosef Omer le'in chametz bepesach. That if any of these things became chametz, and you ate a kazayas on Pesach, you're chayev kores for Pesach, and it's not just a kazayas of dough or a kazayas of flour or kazayas of the kernels. They're all hitzdaref together, and if it reaches a kazayas, you're chayev kores. That's the way Rav Yosef learns, right? Rav Kahana learned it regarding the Isser of Chodosh. Rav Yosef learns it's regarding the Isser of kores on Pesach. Rav Papa Omer le'inyan meiser sheni. So we know if you're a farmer in Tel Aviv, so 1/50th of your grain you give to the Kohen Truma. 1/10 Meiser Rishon you give to the Levi. The second 10th is Meiser Sheni. And you have 6 years of the Shemitah cycle. In the first, second, and fourth and fifth years of the Shemitah cycle, the Meiser Sheni you physically brought to Yerushalayim, you have to eat it within the walls of Yerushalayim. Or you could add 20% if it's the wheat was $100. You redeem the wheat for $120, and you bring the $120 to Yerushalayim. You buy food, and that food has to be eaten within the walls of Yerushalayim. In the third and sixth year of the Shemitah cycle, this second Meiser is called Meiser Oni, and it was given to Aniyim. But right now, Rav Papa is learning also if you eat lo sochlu, you have to eat it b'sharecha. There's a lav. And therefore, if you eat a kazayas of Meiser Sheni outside of the walls of Yerushalayim, you get malchus. And Rav Papa is saying that there's hitztarfus between tvua, kemach, and botzek to give you the chi of malchus. The ochle chutz l'choyma, lucky. So we have three versions of how to understand. And there's a fourth, Rava Omar, lenient tumas oichlin. So food to acquire tuma has to be the size of a beitza. Tumas oichlin, right, is conveyed tuma to once it's the size of an egg. And the kernels, the dough, and the flour are all mitzdaref letumas beitza. The chiddush is that even flour and the kernels of the grain itself are like the dough. That dough is considered food. It's considered food. Vatanya, and there's a brisa to support what Rava said. Chita, ben klufa, ben shena klufa, a kernel of wheat, whether it's peeled or not peeled, mitzdarefes, combines with food to make a beitza. Now, so that's only by wheat. Sa'oira, the the peel of the barley grain is not edible. So therefore, klufa, if the barley is peeled, mitzdarefes. Ain a klufa, ain mitzdarefes. So we've learned the husks of wheat is considered food, but the outer coverings of the barley is not considered food. And therefore it would not also, the husks of barley would not be mitzdaref to the shir kibetza. The Gemara says, "Ain, it's not so." Vatan Rabbi Shmuel, regarding seeds that are makabel tuma, I'll call zera zeru asher zerea, seeds that are plantable. If the seeds are ready to be planted, for example, chita biklipasa, usoir biklipasa, vadasha biklipasa. So it seems that soira is even the peel of the soira is considered to be part of the food. And it's considered and therefore it would convey tumah. So that seems to be a kasha. Loy kasha depends. Abalachos. If these coverings of the barley is moist, then it's considered a shomer to the pre, and therefore they will be mitzdaref to the kernel itself to tumas oichlin. Ha biyaveshos, but if it's dry, they just fall away. They're not considered anything. So we said that the 5 grains, wheat, barley, spelt, right? Asurin b'chodesh mifnei oimer. Prior to the bringing of the oimer, they're asur. Menonimili. Amreish Lakish. Asya lechem imatzah. It says lechem oini, and here it says by chodesh that also you can't eat lechem. And therefore, just like by matzah has to be the 5 grains, by chodesh it's also the 5 grains. Previously, the drasha was for challah. Here we're now extending it to chodesh. And the Mishnah said, and it's also prohibited liktzor lifnei Pesach. There's a separate isser, not just of consuming it, but of harvesting it. Menonimili. Amra shakish asya reshis mechala. By both places it says reshis tzirchem, and by challah it says reshis arisoseichem. Maduch by challah we said it's only the 5 species. Here too, by the harvesting of before the oimer, also it's going to be the 5 grains. Now, when we said you cannot eat it, my kodim la'oimer, we said before the oimer. So there's a lot of different processes. We said you have to harvest the oimer at night, then you bring the korban in the morning. Which is the trigger? Yoina Amar Kodem K'tziris Oimer. He says it's chodesh only until you harvest, and you harvest at night. So once it's harvested, you can eat chodesh. That's why we learned on Shabbos that you could already start meher mizrach. Once the sun goes up on the 16th, Minator, you could eat it. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan made a gzeira to say you can't eat it. And then Rabbi Yehuda said even midaraisa you can't eat it. But it's because once you harvest it the night before, you'd be ready to eat it in the morning. Rabbi Yosi Bar Zavda, but no, kodem havasa omer. It's until you bring the korban omer in the morning. Now we're going to ask a kasha on Rav Yoina, who said that you're already allowed to eat it from the harvest. It's not. Asurin b'chodosh lifnei omer. Chodesh cannot be eaten before the omer. And then it says v'liktzur lifnei Pesach. They're prohibited to be eaten, to be harvested prior to Pesach, which is the first day of Pesach. And apparently, after the first day of the Yontif passes, you could do it even at night, even before the harvesting of the omer at night. That's the kasha on Rav Yoina. I understand Rav Yossi Bar Zavda, who said you can't eat anything until you bring the omer itself as the korban. He talked them as two separate cases. According to Rav Yoina says before the harvest, you could have just learned it all. You could have said Asurim b'chodesh v'liksros now Pesach. You can't eat the chodesh and harvest before Pesach. The fact that it seems to knock Rav Yoina out of the box. Itmar, a seifa itmar. That statement was on the seifa. That the seifa said im hishrishu kodem la'omer. If all these grains took root prior to the omer, ha'omer matirin. That year's omer allows you to eat it. Now, my kodem la'omer. Over there, what does it mean kodem la'omer? Rabbi Yoina omer kodem havasa omer. Rabbi Yoina says clearly it means before the bringing of the omer. But Rabbi Yossi Bar Zavda omer kodem k'tirsa omer, before the harvest. So, according to Rabbi Yossi, if the grain has to take root before the harvest in order for it to work. And then the Gemara will continue. Okay. So let's learn tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Okay?
We'll see you in 11 hours.
No problem.